We're going to talk a little bit about your Twitter game. It's been on fire. We got to address a few more tweets. Last week we talked about some tweets you posted. You said, KG is the Kobe to Tim MJ. People scared to say he better. Duncan had more individual and team success than KG during their NBA career, but just rolling the ball out, do you think KG was a better player than Tim Duncan?
Yes.
And why do you feel that way?
Because he could dribble, fade away. Tim was great, though. But I feel like just because you got accomplishments and championships don't always mean you're better than that person. To me, I feel like his team was better than the Timberwolves. That's why. But if you put KG on that team, I think he had the same amount of rings, plus probably more.
I feel like I have to do this video like once or twice a year where like people just decide for whatever reason to talk about Tim Duncan, attack his legacy, and in the process of doing so, say some of the most outlandish things possible. This is an ongoing conversation that, of course, many of you all have heard several times now. Very old, tired conversation. Who's better, KG or Tim Duncan? And to me, this is hilarious because in real time, no one was really arguing this outside of like 1 or 2 seasons, but for the most part, especially before 2008 occurred, everyone, and I do mean everyone, was saying that Tim Duncan was better than Garnett. Now, to be fair to what Nick Young is saying, at that point in time in NBA history, our conversations about NBA players was very rudimentary. It was definitely a lot of winning bias towards it. And so, yes, there were a lot of people on a year-to-year basis saying that, well, player A is better than player B because player A won more games. Sure, but the concept that Garnett is somehow now better than Tim Duncan because you've seen a couple of highlights of him bringing the ball up and he used to dribble the ball and he could shoot. That doesn't mean that he's better at all, actually.
One thing Nick said was accurate, I agree with. If you put KG on that team, they don't miss a beat.
Yeah.
So
you think Spurs still have a similar amount of success with KG?
Absolutely.
Instead of Tim Duncan?
Absolutely.
Okay.
I'ma disagree. It is really hard for anyone to convince me that you could put a player in a position that Duncan was in between 99 to 2005 and they come out with 2 championships and consistently making the playoffs every single year with those rosters. People tend to, again, embellish who was on that team just because of name value, not necessarily who they were in the moment, not who they were back in 94, not who they were in 2012 or 08, between 99 to 2005. Young Tony, young Manu, when they really weren't getting it off just yet, and an old, deterring David Robinson.
But I think if you put Tim with the Minnesota team, he get them out of the first round and shit like that.
I don't think
so. Would that imply that Tim is?
I don't think they even make the playoffs.
This nigga Nick just said he doesn't believe that Tim Duncan will be able to lead that team to the playoffs. To the playoffs! I want everyone to stop for a second and really contextualize how crazy that sounds. Especially when in like the first 5 years of Garnett's career, y'all lie about how bad that Timberwolves team was. I'm not going to sit here and say it was better than the Spurs, but to sit here and believe that it was so bad that you think that only Kevin Garnett of all players could have led them to the playoffs and not Tim Duncan? No, stop it. Especially when early on, Garnett wasn't even Garnett yet and they were still making the playoffs. Garnett has years out there where he wasn't even putting up 20 points, wasn't even grabbing 10 rebounds. There's a year where Tom Gugliotta, or whatever his name is, was leading that team in points, rebounds, steals, and still made the playoffs. Like this idea that the team was just so bad and they just need every ounce. They just squeeze a life out of Garnett just so they can make the playoffs. Y'all dragging that shit. Y'all dragging it. But that San Antonio Spurs team to be viewed as a title contending team by year 2 of Tim Duncan's career, the levels in which Duncan needed to play in, really on both sides of the floor, because quiet is kept. The offensive hub, the things that they needed Duncan to do every single game, every single year, because no one else on that team was really that great offensively. Oh, David Robinson. Oh, bro, David Robinson, by the time we get to like 3rd or 4th year, Tim Duncan, he was averaging like 9-10 points. That's it. That's all he was doing. Oh my God, look, they had Avery Johnson. You mean Avery Johnson that was averaging 11 points, something like that? That player? That's the big anomaly. I promise you all, you could put the stats from the San Antonio Spurs team in contrast to that 01 Iverson's team, and statistically, they look very similar. But when it comes to Iverson, because these are names that you're not familiar with, all of a sudden that team is egregiously trash. Oh, Tony Parker? Oh, David Robinson? Oh, man, I know those names. Jesus Christ.
The last 3 minutes of the game, you couldn't go to KG because KG would defer. He's going to try to go to Wally Zerbiak and try to go to those guys instead of just taking over. Tim, you can go to Tim at the end and Tim would finish. Like, so one was a better passer, one was so...
I think KG damn near had everything better besides the The bank
shot.
Nick Young just doesn't know what he's talking about, and it's actually irritating the fuck out of me right now. The difference is that in the early parts of the year, in particular, the reason why you couldn't necessarily rely on Garnett down the stretch of games is because he was just too thin. Like, he was trying to post people up, and he couldn't get in proper position, so he had to rely heavily on a jump shot that wasn't consistently falling, especially when defenses started to play a little bit more aggressive. But when it came to Duncan, because he's like 260, 270, maybe even 280 some years, and he's also like 6'11", 7 feet tall, he can just back down in the post and get more quality shots at the rim. This goes into the point of, like, just because Garnett, who I do believe is a more skilled player, doesn't mean he's more impactful than someone else who may be lacking the skills. Who is just more impactful? I don't even know how this is an argument. It's Duncan. It's Duncan.
KG, I was just looking at KG going one-on-one in that little...
Talking about the USA?
I guess.
Yeah.
Like I said, people just sit here and watch highlights and come to conclusions based off of, like, clips. Again, I want to be clear. Garnett is more skilled and talented. But again, the truth of the matter is, at that point in time in NBA history, being a ball-handling forward, unless you're like LeBron James, doesn't really matter, because most teams do not structure an offense where Garnett is taking somebody off the dribble one-on-one for any consistent amount of time. Like, in theory, it's great for bring the ball up and initiate offense, but if you have a coach that's going to put you at a baseline or put you in a post and you're just picking, popping, or catching, shooting it, how often are you even displaying that skill set for it to, again, be as impactful as Tim Duncan, who's like 30, 40 pounds heavier than you and already in the post? What does it matter?
Like, Tim weighed more than I did.
Yeah, he did.
So that played a factor. Him leaning on me, 272, I'm playing at 230. For me, it was that aspect of it.
Yeah.
Thank you, King and Martin. And as a sidebar, the one thing that Duncan doesn't get enough credit for is the fact that he was the size of a center, but he was as nimble as a lot of power forwards. Go back and look at how Duncan, at almost 7 feet tall, weighing, like he just said, 270, and he used to run up and down the floor just as fluid as a lot of forwards, even though he was the size of a center. Again, Garnett was more agile. He ran even more fluid, because Garnett was certainly a unicorn in his own right. I don't want to make it seem like that. But the fact that Duncan could get away being the size of a center and still have the ability to guard a lot of fours further shows the fact that how versatile he could be. He could play both very fluently and be impactful in both roles.
They was missing one piece. Somebody who was going to take a shot at the end of the game. And that became a 30-something-year-old man by the name of Sam Cassell. Sam Cassell go there and then become a 20-point scorer.
He always been that.
But no, he was not a 20-point scorer. His best year was there because
like 17, 18.
Yeah, he always averaged like
because he got put into
20.
He got put into a situation where
Oh man, this is ridiculous to me, because now Gil doesn't know what he's talking about. Yeah, Sam Cassell, before he got to Minnesota, was a near 20-point scorer. And I want to be completely clear with everyone. Being a near or a 20-point scorer as a second or third option, in like for today's game, it basically means you're like a 23, 24-point scorer. Because back then, it really weren't as many possessions. Everything was more defensive oriented, close proximity, especially near the lane, and you're still able to get 20 points off as a second option. That is a rarity. When we talk about a lot of those teams that were constructed back then, Kobe being a second option, giving you 20 plus points, that was not normal. So Sam Cassell doing as a second option, that's not normal. Most second options at that point in time, 15, 18 points on a good night might give you 20. Sam Cassell was averaging 19 points and 7 assists. I'm not even going to sit here and allow anybody to Sam Cassell and act as if like he only did that for 1 year. He effectively did that for like the 3 to 4 years before he even got to Minnesota. At that point in time in NBA history, you would have chosen Sam Cassell over Tony Parker. I just want to let everybody know that right now. You would rather have Sam Cassell than Tony Parker between 98 to 2003. So just because Tony Parker later turned into a Hall of Famer, perennial All-Star, right? All-NBA a couple of times, and Sam Cassell only made All-Star one time. At that time, you would rather have Sam Cassell than Tony Parker. But again, to be fair to Garnett, even when Sam Cassell got hurt and he went down, Garnett still got it off. He got past the Sacramento Kings, lost to the Lakers in 2004, but he was still able to provide the evidence that even without Sam Cassell, he could play at a certain level that could still help them go into the next round.
2 separate times in that situation. They did make the conference finals.
Like,
I'm just saying, but it's a matchup though.
Yeah.
But I'm just.
How much he had though that series? How much they had?
Okay, they both did their thing, man.
How much they had that?
So I actually looked at the numbers because I was actually pretty interested in this conversation as well. Very similar numbers. They both put up very, very similar numbers. However you want to interpret that is up to you. I would make an argument that if Tim Duncan was on clearly more talented rosters than Kevin Garnett, then KG, if he's supposedly better, should have been putting up at least scoring numbers that should have been more. But for the most part, like literally speaking, points, rebounds, assists, steals, blocks, even field goal percentages, all relatively the same between both of them in their 2 matchups in the postseason. So not that significant at all.
KG win multiple defensive player of the years if he's with San Antonio.
individual individually.
Because the way they defended as a team.
He was a great defensive
Absolutely.
player. You add that defensive scheme
With that,
makes him look great.
they used to funnel shit. I can get by Tim, and it's fucking trouble. Dave Roberts is just.
Okay, this point, which is, again, very, very frustrating. The idea that if Garnett played for the Spurs, he would be multiple DPOY recipient. I don't know how the fuck that's even possible, especially because the scheme that they're referring to where David Robinson is able to help would have only existed for like 2 or 3 years. Because after like 2000 or after 01, David Robinson, he was not the same defender. It was already cooked. It was done. It was already done. And this is where a lot of these conversations about who these players are just get tossed around and no one's not really putting things into their proper context. In 2002, when the Spurs were trying to get past the Lakers with Shaq down low, David Robinson didn't even play the entire series. I think he only played like 3 games of a 5-game series. He was picking up 4 to 5 fouls in like under 30 minutes of action. He was immediately just hacking shots, just fouling the fuck out of him because he couldn't stay on the floor. He was washed. And the version of Garnett defensively that a lot of people are referring to happened in between like 03 to like 08. The version that would have potentially won multiple DPOYs. But between 97 or whenever Garnett came in and like 2001 or 2002, Garnett was not that caliber of defender. And this goes back to the same argument I've been having for months now. A huge reason why certain players didn't win certain awards isn't because they're not good defenders. It's simply because you just played in an era where somebody else was a better defender than you. So to sit there and to even allude that he would win multiple DPOYs in the same era of basketball with Ben Wallace, that's crazy. But more importantly, it's ironic because they're literally describing the type of defensive scheme that Garnett is not better than Tim Duncan at. They literally saying they funnel in all the attention to the paint where Tim Duncan is at. And respectfully, of all of the things that Garnett does well, post defense and rim protection, he does worse than Tim Duncan. If you're saying that Garnett would roam, he would switch, he would cut off a lot of the dribble drives because he'd be able to show and recover better than Duncan, sure. But if the scheme was to funnel in all the attention in the lane, no, Garnett would be worse than that. He'll be worse than Duncan.
No matter where you put Tim Duncan, you running plays for him, right?
That's more pressure on you.
You running plays for him, no matter where you put him.
On you.
Right?
More pressure. Because you ain't got Parker and...
Tim Duncan.
Tony Parker had nothing to do with wedge roll, nigga.
I don't talk.
Hey,
Wedge, we say what?
wedge
But
roll.
you not sending doubles. KG
Tony
doubles.
Parker had nothing to do with wedge roll.
What the fuck is Nick? What is Nick Young talking about? You're not getting doubled? You're not getting doubled? I swear, because like there be so many people who be saying dumb shit about Tim Duncan. I don't understand. You're telling me they wasn't doubling Tim Duncan because of a rookie, Tony Parker? Is that what you're telling me? The same nigga who literally in 03 when he won a championship was so bad in the last 3 games of that series, Popovich had to bench him for Speedy Claxton. That's how bad Tony Parker was. And you're telling me now all of a sudden, oh yeah, you ain't gonna double. You got to deal with double teams. He was double teams all throughout his first 7-8 years of his career. Just say you don't watch it and move the fuck on. Y'all be talking about Tony Parker and Manu Ginobili like it's fucking Magic Johnson and James Worthy, my nigga. What are we talking about? Really good players, Hall of Famers. Most of you all would have picked a lot of players that Garnett played with over the players that Tim Duncan played with on a year-to-year basis in real time. And every single time I hear people say, if you put him in that situation, he'll win more games. What more games do you want them to win? How much better defensively do you think they would have gotten? 04, the fucking Spurs was just as good of a defensive team as the Pistons. Oh, the Pistons held 11 teams on 70 points and under. The same year, Spurs held 8 teams of 70 points or under. They were both historically great in the same year. Both of them. Nigga, stop playing, bro. What year do y'all think it would have won even more championships? What year was that? Let me guess. 04 when they lost to the Lakers, going up against Shaquille O'Neal. They then go to 06 against the Dallas Mavericks. They lose against Dallas. In that series, Tim Duncan averaged 32 points, 12 rebounds, 4 assists, 3 blocks, a steal, 55% from the field. So Garnett gonna do better than that for them to win that series? What he gonna do? Turn around and hold Dirk Nowitzki to fewer than 27 points and shooting 53% from the field. Oh wait, but he didn't do that in 2002 when Dirk averaged like 33 points on him and shot even better from the field. Literally, one of the greatest scoring performances in Dirk's playoff career happened against Kevin Garnett. Bro, y'all sit here and y'all drag this shit with Tim Duncan don't make no sense to me at all. Take away the name value. Look at what they were producing in real time, not just in hindsight and look at their entire career and just sitting there and say, ooh, that's David Robinson. Ooh, that's Tony Parker. Ooh, that's Manu Ginobili. Y'all be yapping. Y'all be yapping. But yo, let me know y'all thoughts in the comment section below. This is an old, tired ass argument that I'm tired of having because people be talking with very little nuance, very little details about Tim Duncan and who he is in his career. And I have to keep exposing it and defending it every single time. But until next time, I'll see y'all later. Peace.